Hello and welcome back to my channel. Jacob Payton here. A couple of you have mentioned that you would like to see me start reviewing westerns, so I'm finally going to get around to doing that. I'll probably just pop these videos up randomly, and hopefully YouTube will send them to you if you are subscribed. I thought I would start with a old school western writer. This is Luke Short, Summer of the Smoke. Luke Short is not his actual name. His real name was Frederick Gillian. There's also a middle name that I can't really pronounce, and I may have also butchered his last name. Luke Short was a pseudonym that he wrote under. He wrote a lot of books and I think 4 or 5 movies under that name. Luke Short is also the name of a famous old western gunfighter, so it was a pretty apt pseudonym. I really like Summer of the Smoke. This is also the first Luke Short western I've read. A lot of people have put reviews up that say that they felt Summer of the Smoke was kind of a cookie-cutter western, in which that it just followed the tropes and there wasn't a lot of character development. I would kind of argue that's not 100% true. While the characters themselves were kind of static, I did not think this was a cookie-cutter western by any means. Here, I'll read the back. That's probably a good way to get into it. Army Scout Keith Calhoun could read the smoke signals that rose all over the plains against the hot, brassy sky. The lazy, drifting smoke meant that Mako, anyway, strong and treacherous Apache chief, had broken loose and was ready to lead his marauding warriors against the settlements, burning and raiding his way to the Mexican border. But the army wouldn't listen to Calhoun. Alone and wounded, he rode into the wild mountains after the renegade Apache chief. Now only Calhoun's cunning and courage stood between Mako and his savage massacre. So, basically Calhoun in this book is set up as an army scout, which is kind of a trope for most westerns. There are, at least westerns that I've read, the protagonists tend to be scouts, which kind of do their own thing, instead of the rank and file cavalry troops. In this, much like some of those other books, Calhoun is not interested in the way the rest of the cavalry unit that he's attached to is conducting business. And what I mean by that is they seem to think that if they basically just punish any Native Americans they come across, that will be enough to somehow scare Mako out of hiding. Whereas Calhoun thinks that there is a different approach that needs to be taken. Sadly, though, he is wounded, and instead of letting him heal, they leave him in this town and pay for him basically his room and board for a little while. Now, this town is close to where Mako was sighted last. So while he's there, he kind of starts people watching and discovers that there might be a link between a local shopkeeper and this notorious Apache chief, who basically he's more of like a rebel chief in which he's trying to incite violence against settlers and stuff like that. And basically in Calhoun's mind, it doesn't end good for anybody, because if he's successful, then yes, he will most likely destroy settlements on his way to Mexico. But instead of his people being hunted that he takes with him to Mexico, the ones that will be hunted are the ones that won't have anything to do with it, much like the cavalry he rode with. He knows that they would take it out on the innocent civilians and the Native Americans that are left behind that had nothing to do with these raids. So that's kind of what he wants to stop. What I thought was really interesting in this is, well, yes, Calhoun himself is described as a capable fighter. He's wounded for most of the book, so it's not like he's walking around with his gun out and fighting people. In fact, he can barely move for a good, portion of this book, and is kind of having to be taken care of. So it's a lot different than I think some of the Louis Moore books and other books that I'm used to reading. Especially since it seems like in those books, when someone gets shot, they're completely fine the next day. They just, rub a little salt on it and are good to go. So yeah, that I think is a very different approach than most Westerns. I don't really want to spoil the ending. Obviously there is a romantic element in this. Just like, all Western books, there kind of has to be a little bit of romance. Our gunfighter has to wind up with you know, some cowgirl he's met along the way. But I thought this was fun. I didn't see it as much of a shoot 'em up Western as it was more of a mystery as he's trying to track down who is behind, giving aid to this fugitive and why. Which is actually a pretty interesting reason, and I actually thought that was kind of fun. It's also not a very big book, so it only comes in at, let's see, 122 pages, so it's not a very long book at all. It's honestly shorter than some of the newer novellas I've seen being put out. So, a good little way to spend 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon type of thing. I, once again, can't say enough good things about this book. This is the first Luke short book that I've read, and I will be reading more. If you want a Western that's not a straight-up action adventure shoot 'em up and want to try something a little different, then I highly recommend checking out Summer of the Smoke. If you can find a copy, I will try to link one if I can find an ebook copy. I did pick this up at a used bookstore, so I'm not 100% sure what the availability of Luke's short work is these days, but if I can find copies, I will link them wherever they're available. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the first of what I'm hoping to be mini Western reviews. And as always, please like and subscribe and leave a comment, and I will see you guys.